Pleasure to be with you, Kumar. It is an honor and delight to talk of the fallacy of the next big thing and the exceptionals. So over to you, Kumar, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Raman. It's great to be here, and thanks all of you for inviting me to your event. It's truly an honor. I'm in Seattle, and I'm quite far from New Delhi, but I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to sharing some thoughts and discussing any issues and any questions around innovation or around the exceptionals. Today, I'm going to talk about the next big thing. Everyone, every founder, entrepreneur, business manager, leader from every company, big and small, is always looking for the next big thing. And the reason is simple. If you know what the next big thing is, you can invest in it early before other people do, create a dominant presence, and reap the rewards. That's why we're all looking for the next big thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Well, I've spent years studying innovation and studying with. And I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about the fallacy of the next big thing. When you think about the next big thing, there are three problems with it. The first is next, the second is big, and the third is thing. Apart from that, it's all fine. So let's look at each of them. Let's talk about next. Innovations are never next or new. Very rarely do innovations take the world by surprise. Most developments are known well in advance, and we can actually see them coming. One of the giant Silicon Valley tech companies I worked with did this very interesting thing. They went back and looked at the strategic plan from 10 years ago. The idea was, hey, we made a strategic plan 10 years ago. Now let's see what happened over the decade. Were we right? Were we wrong? Did we predict things right? So what they learned was whatever they had predicted 10 years ago, by and large, came true over the next decade. Nothing new came that just completely took them by surprise. And this is in the technology industry, the most rapidly growing industry. The trends were clear. The people who won during that time were the ones who acted upon the trends. Throughout history, innovations have had a slow evolution process. Things move slowly, not because they have to, but because people don't adopt new things and don't find value. Take one of the innovations we can't live without today, paper currency. We use it every day. It's just part of our daily lives. This was an innovation that was invented in ancient China almost 1,000 years ago. But it took centuries for the Western world to adopt it, not because they didn't know about it, but in their minds, the notion of using paper as something that represents value was such a far-fetched foreign concept that they just could not do it. It wasn't gold or something obvious or tangible value. And that's why this innovation languished. And the same is throughout the course of history. It took 80 years from the first light bulb to Thomas Edison's light bulb, the one we're all familiar with today, for that one to revolutionize the world. Again, it wasn't a snap. It took a long time. It took 10 years from the discovery of this wonder drug, penicillin, by Alexander Fleming, till another group of scientists even decided to look at it further and take action with it. All of these innovations were lying there in plain sight, waiting for someone to come in and provide the right degree of value. And today, if you think about all the companies or products who think about the great innovations, are the same thing. Microsoft didn't create the first computer operating system. Google didn't create the first search engine. Facebook didn't create the first social platform. Apple didn't create the first music device or the first smartphone. Tesla did not create the first electric vehicle. All of these were there. The trends were there waiting for people to come in and give value. And you are all aware of the trends shaping your industry. So you shouldn't be looking for something that's next or new. The challenge for you is to recognize the trends and provide the right set of value that will make your customers line up for your products. And that is why you have to think about what you're doing as you think about innovation. You shouldn't be looking at the next bandwagon to jump onto. The true innovators are the ones that take the existing trends and provide the real value. Let's spend a minute talking about big, the second fallacy of the next big thing. Now, everyone wants something big. If you're in a large company, you have no choice. You have to make big bets, and your big bets need to pay off if you need to move the needle. If you're a small company, you're dreaming of doing something big. However, it's hard to create a big business unless you create a small business first. And many people don't want to do that. They're not interested in opportunities that appear small. But remember, very few billion-dollar businesses started with a view of becoming a billion-dollar business. The only thing that these innovative companies had in common was that they altered the customer experience in a big way. And that's what created an insane amount of value for customers and an insane amount of profits for the company. I mean, let's look at the biggest of the big. Let's take Google, today's internet heavyweight. Google started off as an academic experiment by 2 PhD students, simply as a way to understand how web pages are connected to each other. The idea was simple. You could determine the importance or rank of a page by looking at how many pages are connected to that page and how many other web pages are linked to each of those. Now, this wasn't even a commercial initiative. It was an academic project. Building the world's leading search engine, which led to Google becoming one of the most dominant, valuable companies on the planet, was far from anybody's imagination. They weren't even in the search business. Search results were a byproduct of the index that they had created. But when the Google founders realized that their search results were superior to those of other search engines of the time, they were ready to sell the company to Excite, which was another search engine at the time, for less than $1 million. And of course, Excite refused. So Google, as we know, became big. It became very big. But the big happened not by executing on a big world-changing plan. It happened by providing a big change in the experience of users, something I call a large experience delta. There was a big difference between the old experience and the new experience. And that is where the big happens. Biggest innovations don't start off as big. The big opportunity you're chasing may actually appear as something quite small. And the key is to get into the habit of recognizing these opportunities and the ones that make a big difference in the experience of users, not the ones that look big on financial models. And that's where people get tripped up and people kind of get sidetracked. But once you're able to do this even on a small scale, chances are high that the right opportunity will become big game changers. Okay, so we've talked about next, we've talked about big. Let's spend a couple of minutes talking about thing. The third flaw in this relentless search for the next big thing is thing. Now, there's actually two problems with thing. The first one is that the innovation is often not a thing. It's not a product. It may be a change in a business model, or it could be something else. And the second problem with the thing is that very often the thing you think as of the innovation is not the real innovation. It's something else that actually truly makes a difference, something I call the thing behind the thing. And let's spend a minute talking about both of them. First, while companies are view innovation through a lens of new product development or building out new things, most of the disruptions, or many of the disruptions rather, come from just slight changes in the business model. American Airlines was the company that popularized the concept of frequent flyer miles. The thing they were selling was still the same. They were still selling airline seats, but the innovation that transformed how every single person thinks about air travel was simply a program designed to reward those who travel more. Now, frequent flyer miles, which included free travel or first class upgrade, were highly tangible, coveted material rewards that people found value in for flying on one airline instead of another. The cost to the company was minuscule. All they were doing was giving their unsold seats to their best customers. So this was a perfect win-win for the customer and the company, and that resulted in the greatest loyalty program of all time. Or there's several other examples where innovation, or if I look at my own experience where I spent the majority of my career at Microsoft, think about Microsoft Office, one of the most successful franchises in the history of business. Microsoft Office was not a thing. Microsoft Office was simply taking 3 separate productivity applications and putting them into one bundle. It wasn't something new. It again was a perfect win-win for the customer and the company. The customers liked it because they got a full suite of productivity applications for one low price, and the company liked it because they became the sole provider for it. Again, the perfect win-win between the company and the customer. So the thing is not really a thing. It can be a change in business model. Now, if you recall, I said that there were two problems with thing. One was what I just mentioned, and the other was that the thing is not really the innovation. The innovation could be something else. Now, many people think about the wheel as one of the greatest innovations in the history of the human race. But when you study the invention of the wheel, you learn that coming up with the wheel was the easy part. The wheel wasn't that hard to make. The hard part was connecting the wheel to a stable platform. The real innovation was the axle and the combination of the wheel and the axle. The axle was the thing behind the thing. But so while we think about the wheel, we actually think that that innovation would not have been possible without the thing behind the thing, which was the axle. Or not too long ago, so the point here is to think very holistically when you're thinking about innovation. It's not just a product you're developing. It could be any number of things. So I hope that gives you some kind of a sense of the fallacy of the next big thing and gives you some food for thought. Now, the reason I bring up the next big thing is because we have to be careful about how we think about innovation. How we speak about things influences how we think about it. And this talk is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit of a play on words, because in reality, there'll be the next big thing. There'll be the new drug that cures cancer or whatever it may be. But if we only talk about the next big thing, then our actions are going to be looking for a thing that's new, that's out there, and that's big. When in fact, the real innovation may be sitting right in front of you, perhaps in a small form, in a form that's not recognizable. And those are the opportunities that you don't want to miss. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the work I've been doing more recently. I just published my second book called The Exceptionals, and it was a fascinating project where I was trying to understand what makes some people exceptional or really the best of the best. Just what makes people not the 1%, but the 1% of the 1%, the people who truly change the world. And all of us want to do that. Everyone wants to become the best that they possibly can. You want that not only for yourselves, but you want that for your children, especially for your children. And then you think about the people you admire, whether it's Federer or Tendulkar or Tiger Woods or Bill Gates or Musk or any people you admire, they've truly left a lasting impression on the world. So for the past 3 years, I've been studying why this very small set of people has such an outsized influence on the world. Why some people achieve this level of extreme success and others don't. Others who may be just as smart, as capable, as talented, but they don't. And I've been looking at this topic from every angle. And my research, the most fascinating part of my research was this set of very fascinating and interesting discussions with some of the world's most extraordinary people, including elite athletes, gold medal winners in the Olympics, Nobel laureates, world-renowned musicians, people in other fields who've really separated themselves from everyone else. And I've been trying to understand what is it about these people. So when you get to know the exceptionals, what you realize is that it doesn't matter what field you're in. All exceptionals, whether it's a Nobel Prize in physics or whether it's a tennis superstar, share many of the same traits. And if you apply those traits to your life, you too have the opportunity to become exceptional. Now you have to do it. It's not going to be easy, but there is a formula. There is a way, there is a set of common elements. And I've written about that in this new book, The Exceptionals, about how the best in the world have done it and how you can too. Now, we all have our opinions. We all have our ideas on what it takes to become exceptional. Maybe we think it's 10,000 hours. That's popular. It was written about by Malcolm Gladwell. Maybe we think that's 10,000 hours will do it for us. Or maybe we think we need grit, or maybe we think we need some kind of a mindset, a growth mindset. Now, one thing I've learned is that all of these things are necessary, but none of them are sufficient. Being exceptional is never one thing. It's a combination of several traits. So if you think about what it takes to become exceptional, 50% of exceptional achievement comes with what you're born with. Even if I spend 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 hours, I will never become a sprinter like Usain Bolt. I'll never become a singer like Adele. These people are just born with a set of abilities that most people aren't, or that others aren't. So if you want to become exceptional at something, you need to find the areas where you have a special gift. Just as Bolt had a gift for speed, which he did actually. He actually wanted to grow up and become a cricket player, but everyone, and it was his cricket coach who said, hey, you are really fast. You should think about sprinting. So you need to find your gift, and you have one. There's different kinds of things. While Bolt was born with speed, you could be born with a special gift for words or spatial abilities like Magnus Carlsen, or mathematical and logical intelligence like Bill Gates, or you can have an ear for music. There are many, there's a set of different skills. You need to build upon your skills. The most exceptional individuals are the ones who play to their strengths, play to their innate talents. Now, through all the stuff we talk about, hard work and grit and perseverance and commitment, you can actually become good at just about anything. But if you want to become the best in the world at what you do, you have to play to your strengths. And that's so that's the first element. But once you get in and once you're playing in an area of your strength, the rest of it becoming exceptional is what you do with it. The second thing, 25% of what it takes to become exceptional is the intensity of effort. It's how hard you work. And honestly, there is just no substitute for hard work. One thing I learned, in fact, the most common phrase I learned from when I was speaking to all these exceptionals around the world is this phrase, no one will outwork me. It was something that everyone who's achieved that level of success has said. So if you want to become an entrepreneur and become a world changer, that's what you're going to have to plan for. And think about it, Tiger Woods used to work for 13 hours a day. Novak Djokovic practiced for 14 hours a day. Bill Gates, when he was building Microsoft in his 20s, he never believed in the concept of taking weekends off and never took a vacation in his entire 20s. It was just a different sort of commitment that people have to make. Now, you don't have to do it. It's very hard to do. But the people who become the best and have changed the world have made that commitment, and that's what's helped them. Now, the 50% of what makes you exceptional is what you're born with, and 25% is the effort you put into it. There's still 25% remaining. And these are the intangibles or the enabling traits. And each of these traits are necessary. And there are 5 of them, and I'll go through them very quickly, just so that you have an idea. Now, every single one of them is essential. You can't not have any of them. The first one is this commitment, no plan B. The most exceptional people have an unwavering commitment to what they plan on doing. Bjorn Borg, the tennis superstar, when he was 8 years old, his dream was to play on the center court at Wimbledon. And that's the only dream he followed. And he's not the only one. Every single one had the same level of focus on one thing. They didn't have a plan B. They didn't say, well, if I don't become a tennis player, maybe I'll go and manage my family's business. That was never in their thought process. There was no alternative. You go after your plan A, and only when you go after plan A with your full commitment do you have an opportunity to achieve it. The second trait that's common across all exceptionals is the self-belief. If you want to become exceptional or become the best in your field, you need to deeply believe that you can. You need to have a level of confidence, this inner confidence that you are able to achieve what you want to achieve. And that is actually pretty hard. When I speak to Olympic athletes, I learned that many Olympic races were lost before the starting gun goes off. Not because the athletes weren't fast enough or well-trained enough, but because when they get over there, when they stand at the starting line and they look around them and they see all these other great runners, they question themselves and say, do I even belong here? And the minute you have that doubt, you've lost the race before you start. So you have to have that self-belief, something that the most accomplished people have. The third thing that drives this is something is the environment. You have to be in a supportive environment. You have to be surrounded by high achieving people, people who kind of who build this culture of striving, and you have to have access to everything you need to succeed. And if you don't have that environment, you're not going to actually make it there. All the exceptionals came in an environment where, from a young age, they had this culture of striving. They had this environment where excellence was expected in everything they did. It wasn't something nice to have. It was just something that they had to do. The fourth thing is a concept that I've written about called micro excellence. Everyone wants big things, but the people who don't get them are the ones who chase them all at once. The exceptionals break up their field into tiny little details and focus on optimizing every tiny detail. They're focused on the things that other people ignore. They're focused on the insignificant details. And I actually know this firsthand because I've interacted with Bill Gates enough times to see how detailed he was about everything, not just technology, but about marketing, about human resources, about analysis, about data, about sales. He would just get into everything to a level of detail and really learn about it. And that's the same kind of thing he's done today with his foundation, where he's picked up, these different areas and really gotten knowledgeable about them. So think about micro excellence as you think about building your career and your company. And the last thing is that nobody has done it alone. Every single exceptional person can point to specific mentors, coaches, people who influenced their lives, people who've given them knowledge to help them become who they are. And they all understand that the knowledge required to become exceptional is vast and it is growing. And they have access to that. They're voracious readers. They love learning. They love picking up things, not only in their domain, but from other domains, parallel domains, and bringing new ideas into their field. So if you want to become the best in your field, you can't do it by one thing alone. You need to have some sort of innate abilities. You need to play to your strengths. You need to be willing to work hard, and you need to have these enablers. And these are represented by the 3 spheres on this slide. Any one of them can make you average. Or most people are in one bucket. If you are in 2 of these 2 spheres, if you're a hard worker and you have some abilities, you can become very good. But if you're in all 3, that's what separates the good from the great, or the outstanding and the elite. And that's what makes people exceptional. And I'm going to leave it there. I know that there may be some questions, and I'd love to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Absolutely fascinating, Kumar. Thank you very much. Despite having read your articles, your book, etc., I learned a lot in the session. So just a couple of questions, Kumar, just to build on what you said. You said you can be big on experience of users. Your focus, where you talk of the next big thing, where you talk of big, is on customers and the experience. And I actually heard you say, not on the financials. Can you bring out the importance of that customer, particularly as a lot of this target audience of startups is talking to their customers? Just bring out what they should focus on the customers, because a lot of startups I meet, a lot of people attending, come back and talk of valuation and come back or talking there. And I heard you say that is a consequence. It is the customer. Can I request you to build on that?
Sure. Yeah, because I think you're absolutely right. We are so caught up in building these financial models, or trying to see, if there are 10 million customers, and if I just get 0.1% and they pay me so much, I'm going to make so much money. We just get so caught up in that. And we've all done that a million times. And innovation or great things don't happen on a spreadsheet. They happen they happen when you look at problems and you try to solve problems. I mean, take a simple example, something that changed manufacturing, the assembly line. It was a very simple concept. It was basically instead of the worker going to the work came to the worker. It's just a slight change in how people thought about improving the experience, and that has literally changed the world. And that's what I mean when I talk a little bit of the way companies can do that is think about this concept that I talk about called the experience delta. Things are done a certain way. If you're able to change the experience, the bigger the change in that experience is the experience delta. And the bigger the change, the bigger the innovation. So when you think about, I actually talk about this as a currency for innovation. It's not what you make from it, but it's how much of your experience can you change. And if companies get into the habit of thinking about that, then that's where breakthroughs happen. Not on models and other people executing on them. So Microsoft has this innovation hub called the Garage, where they actually have opened it up and have made an innovation infrastructure available to anyone in the company. And everyone in the company can go there, test out their ideas and build something new. And so they actually democratize innovation. And once a year, they have this event called the Hackathon, where they encourage everyone to innovate, where people create teams, and the executives of the company, including Satya Nadella, the CEO, are involved in picking out some of the great new things that get developed as a result of this. And in the most recent hackathon, and this program actually made, they counted 70,000 employees participated in innovation. And that is what you need to do if you want to build a culture of innovation that democratizes innovation and makes it everybody's job.
Fascinating. Kumar, that learning. So Kumar, I'll come to my last questions from the exceptionals that you brought out. So I get the innate ability, and I guess you said in your talk, you're born with that innate ability. I get that. Then you spoke about the enablers and the intense effort that goes in. So what is the thinking? Whatever that innate ability is, and you said find what your innate ability is, but can the enablers and the intense effort, is that trainable? Is that something that can be nurtured and grown and build on the innate ability, or is that also something you're born with?
That's a very good question. And your innate abilities, of course, is something you're born with, but everything else can be trained and grown. Even the ability to work hard, and that's what the book is. It's 200 pages of actually explaining how you can make each of those things and how you can train. That the good news is that it's not a static capability. Even things like your self-belief and your self-confidence, that can be grown. Your commitment can be grown. You can keep up with your commitments. There are actually techniques you can do to work hard. There are a lot of people who haven't been hard workers who actually work hard. If you think about Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, the writer, he had this vivid imagination. He had all these innate abilities. He had experiences because he was in the British Navy, but he knew that writing a book was hard work. And so he established a process. I'm going to write from this time to this time every day, no matter what, that's what I'm going to do. And all of a sudden, before you realize, you're able to work hard without even knowing you're working hard. So there are techniques you can use to do all of these things to actually become exceptional. And I do believe that if you find your strength, which a lot of people don't know, a lot of people say, I don't know what I'm good at, but you are good at something. You have to figure it out. And there are ways you can do that too, which I've written about. But if you find your strength, everything else is a learnable skill and everything else can be achieved. So becoming exceptional is not reserved for people you see on TV. It is something you and me and all of us can do.
Very interesting, Kumar. Actually, hearing you talk about it, you wrote this for corporate. Maybe your next edition of the book, you'll add a couple of chapters on parenting. Because, as I hear you talk about this, it kind of clicks in which way you've got to nurture and grow, whether it is your team in the office or whether it's your kids at home. It works the same way.
You're absolutely right. And the book is my first book was a corporate book, The Innovation Biome. The Exceptionals is not a corporate book. It's about it's meant for everyone. But you actually hit it on the head, because I'm thinking that my next book would be geared towards parents, because a lot of times you can't come out of business school when you're 25 years old and say, okay, now I'm going to do this. A lot of times you can do a lot, but in many cases you just need to start earlier, and you need to have that environment. You need to, as parents, you need to create that culture of striving that I talked about for your kids, and that happens at a very early age.
Right. So, Dr. Kumar Mehta, if I may address you by your full name for the first time, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure the audience learned a lot. They will sit back and think about innovation and bring innovation into their companies. Thank you very much for sharing your learning with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to speaking with you again and interacting with you, with the audience. Thank you so much for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you so much.